that good things come in small packages. Well, that's not always true. Introducing the Millennium Sapphire, the largest cut blue sapphire in the world, 61,500 carats. And that's not even what makes it special. I can already see people making changes to their birthday wishes. Discover the value of your story.
Increase. So this award lets me know that
good morning, bonjour, comment ça va? Et toi? Je suis heureux. I'm extremely happy. Ni hao, hola, bienvenue, wan ying, bienvenidos, bienvenita, benvenuta, namaste, and welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemmological storyteller. And each and every week, I get the magnificent opportunity to take you on an adventure. To places you've never been before, to hear stories you've never heard before. Each week, I take the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry, and put them all together into a story. What I have discovered and keep discovering each week that I do this show is that many of the same characteristics, the same traits, the same attributes that we so highly praise and value in gemstones can be found in people, can be found in you. So what I do is take those gem stories and use them as a template, as an inception point, as a bridge to help you discover, to empower you, to maybe convince you to take some time to look at yourself, to take time to discover the value of your own stories. And I am so I'm so excited. Thank you, Barbara. I'm so excited about being here today for a variety of reasons. Today's show is entitled Cut and the Manifestation of a Gemstone. And as you can see, I'm back. I'm back in the United States. And it was a absolutely transformative trip on so many different levels. And you know how you get to those points in your life where you know everything just came together? Everything at this moment, this time is the reason for so many things that happen in your life. You see it in movies all the time, but lots of times people don't see it in yourself in themselves. So for me, today is that day. Today is November 22nd, 2023. Happy early Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving. Enjoy the food for my friends and family in France and Francais. Just enjoy Tuesday and Wednesday and every day that you guys have like absolutely phenomenal food. You know, French, they don't need Thanksgiving to make special deals. It's Tuesday. That's a wonderful meal. So bon appetit to everyone on the show. November 22nd is a phenomenal date for me. And I didn't really think about it until a couple of days ago how everything came together. November 22nd November was the day that I graduated from Marine Corps boot camp 45 years ago. Today actually was November 13th. November 22nd was the day that I got married. My first marriage was November 22nd, 1978. I should have known there was a problem because that's actually the same day that Kennedy got shot, you know, and there's a correlation. And November was also the first time that I wrote a book report. I'm talking about like eighth grade, when I wrote a book report about the person that we're going to talk about today. It was the first time I got an A++. So November this month has really significant meaning to me. So you hear that passion, you hear what I'm saying. That's the reason why this has been in me for over 40 years. Today, we're going to talk about cut. And most of you are familiar with the 4 C's. We're going to talk about cut, and we're going to talk about probably one of the greatest leaders, certainly one of the greatest, if not the greatest military leader, one of the greatest leaders, one of the greatest human beings in regards to what they did during their lifetime in history, as far as I'm concerned, and that's Napoleon Bonaparte. And what I'm going to show you today, for those of you who are non-believers, for those of you who still don't understand how I can put together gemstones and the whole concept of gemstones and gemology together with people, I'm going to show you today. Because when I really realized, I'm like, oh my God. And what makes this day really special is this is the same day. This is the day that they're going to premiere the movie Napoleon. Today. All right. So all these things are coming together. I'm talking about cut, which is what I was originally going to talk about this week anyhow. Then I realized that the significance of the date today for me. And then I realized that this is the same day that Napoleon's movie is going to come out. And it was just like I tell you every week, it's a spiritual thing for me. Each week when I end the show, I'm thinking, okay, and Barbara can tell you, my executive producer, my wonderful executive producer, she can tell you every week I sit there and go, okay, what are we going to talk about next week? And it just comes. It's just come. And part of my excitement is because I get to share it with all of you. So let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about cut. Most people are familiar with the 4 C's, right? You talk about color, carat, which is weight, cut, and then clarity. Most people are familiar with that. Cut, color, clarity, and carat weight. Most people know that. Even people who don't know anything about diamonds, they know that. They know they like diamonds and they know the 4 C's. Millions of men and women are going to jewelry stores saying, okay, and what are the 4 C's? So you know that. But what most people don't understand is that cut of the 4 C's, cut is the most important. Cut is the most important thing. And I didn't really even realize that. Coming into gemology, studying gemology, I didn't understand the importance of cut. I knew that cut was one of the 4 C's, but I didn't really understand how it fits into the dynamics. It's almost like listening to music. And at first you're like, okay, it's notes. Okay, they played it on a piano. Okay, they played it on some instrument. But then later on you realize how that technique or the sound of their voice matched the instrument, or just they took the notes in different ways. So that's what cut is. Cut is more important than clarity. Cut is more important than color. Cut is certainly more important to carry weight. In fact, not so much just not as important. Those things are not as important. Cut is the reason why those other three characteristics pretty much exist. So that's cut. So last week, the last 2 weeks, and there's a reason why I did that, because I needed you to understand what critical angle was. So last 2 weeks, we talked about critical angle, the way light goes into a diamond, right? And we talked about that there's a certain angle that has to happen in a diamond. For those of you who are new to my show, this is not a real diamond. I always think about that because I live in Chicago. I don't want to get hit over the head. This is not a real diamond. So, but it's cut like a real diamond. So light would come in, and we talked about what's refractive index. Refractive index is what happens in this diamond when light gets into this diamond. We talked about that for the last 2 weeks. All right. So now let's continue on. Now, and I told you that a cut of a gemstone it's not shape. Most people think cut is a shape. Cut is not shape. Shape is shape is the way cut manifests itself. What you can do with that gemstone. That's what shape is. So when people say, oh, cut is marquee cut or round brilliant or princess or Asher cut, that's not what cut is. Cut is the things that the person saw, the lapidary or the diamantaire, the diamond cutter saw, and he or she took that diamond, that material, and cut it in a certain way where the gemstone you're talking about the gemstone's proportions, you're talking about the gemstone's facets, and you're talking about the symmetry of the gemstone and the overall finish. So what you get, what you see, that's what cut is. Cut refers to how the gemstone has been fashioned from a raw gemstone, rough gemstone, to a polished gem. That's what cut is. So cut is extremely important to what a gemstone is, especially a diamond. You can really see it in a diamond. So we talked about light performance. What is light performance? Light performance is how the gemstone, how that gemstone interacts with the light and how it affects the way you see it, the overall appearance of that. Keep that in mind. Think about that. Light performance, how it interacts with light. It involves evaluating how the gemstone reflects, refracts, bends, and disperses the light, ultimately determining the brilliance, the fire, and the sparkle. That's what it's about. So when you look at a gemstone, you're talking about brilliance, fire, and sparkle. And it's different for different people. Some people like the brilliance of a diamond, that light, like, damn, girl, that looks, you got to wear sunglasses because it's so bright. And then some people like the fire. The fire is the way that gem material will split the light up into its various wavelengths. That's the fire, the sparkle. Okay? So when you see a diamond, and I'll let you drool for a second. Anyhow, when you see a diamond, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the cut of that diamond. You're looking at the way the diamantaire saw that diamond and put the facets, cut it. I speak English as a primary language. The cut of a diamond, what you see is how that diamantaire saw that diamond from its rough gemstone, from just nothing. And he or she saw it in such a way that it produced something that looks like that. And when you really think about it, there's no oops. I told you that, 20 years ago? No, not 20 years ago, 16, 17 years ago, I had an opportunity to cut my second wife's engagement ring under the auspices of a Russian diamantaire. And it was like Marine Corps boot camp. I'm not saying I produced anything like that, but I understand the painstaking understanding of angles and positions and everything that had to put in to make a gemstone sparkle, to bring that gemstone to life. That's what you're looking at when you look at a diamond. And there's no oops. There's no Andre. That was his name. I kept thinking, what is it? Andre. Andre kept saying, you mess up. That's it. You mess up. So the pressure. So someone who is a diamantaire has to look at something and understand what its potential can be. Take a second to think about that. Someone had to see that brown gemstone, brown, could have that effect on the light. Someone had to see that black gemstone, that black diamond, had to see what beauty can come out of a gemstone. That when most people think about a diamond, they don't think about a black diamond. They think about a white diamond, yellow diamond, pink diamond, red diamond. They're not thinking about a black diamond. But a black diamond can also be cut in a certain way, in a certain manner, with critical angles, in the way it's faceted, the way it's polished, to produce something beautiful. And if you're into black as a color, as a well, we know black is not a color, but let's just say, for instance, if you're into black and you understand the power of a diamond, when you have a black diamond, you're bringing those things together. So a diamantaire, think about it. What a diamantaire does, what a diamond cutter does, is he or she, I want you to understand that they have to see your potential. Not your potential, but extrapolate. Anytime I say diamond, put you in its place. They have to see your potential. They have to understand what you can be. Because when a diamond comes out, this is a diamond. This is a diamond. This is what it looks like. If I threw this on the ground, and of course, this is like a really, really good example of a rough diamond. But if I threw this diamond on the ground, you'd walk right past it. You wouldn't think anything of it. You would think it's a broken glass bottle, Coke bottle. You wouldn't think anything of it. So a diamantaire has to look at that structure in its rough form, and that comes from this. This is if this was people, this would be the slums, right? This would be the ghetto. This would be the hood, right? Where you come from? Oh, I come from that deep hole. Oh man, you come from deep hole land. Man, that doesn't even sound right, but you know what I'm saying. You come from there, man, that's a messed up place, man. It's just like, wow, how do you live there? That's where a diamond comes from. Diamonds are not found on trees or groves or little orchards and stuff. No, this is where diamonds come from. And so a diamantaire has to take something that looked like that comes from this place, and to literally see it. That's the part I want you to get. They have to see it before they make a cut, because as Andre says, there is no oops. There's no, oh man, can I do that again? No, because carat, which is weight, you want to produce a gemstone that has as much weight as possible and still maximizing its beauty. So the shape of a gemstone comes from a diamantaire seeing the potential of a rough diamond and saying to him or herself, I think if I make it this shape, if I make it a round brilliant, I think if I make it a pear shape, if I think I make it princess cut, if I think I'd make it emerald cut, that cut, those angles, those facets will allow me to produce something extraordinary. That's the Hope Diamond. And you have to understand, when you begin to understand the depths of that, this is before technology. This diamond was owned by actually Louis XIV. Louis XIV was the original owner. Well, it was stolen from India, so it wasn't the original owner. But he was one of the owners who owned the French blue, which was called before the the Hope Diamond. This is it. So someone, a diamantaire, had to see that rough gemstone, that rough diamond, and cut it in such a way that all the colors came to the top. Light performance. Because you have to understand that a gemstone, what is a diamond made out of? Carbon. So you just, for a blue diamond, you need hints. So like every 1,000 molecules, you might have 2 molecules that are boron. And that just the way that boron, which is in the diamond, is in the molecular structure of the diamond, somewhere in there, when light hits it, and the way the diamantaire cuts it, critical angle, it manifests a blue color. That's what you see. That's what you see. When you see the Hope Diamond or any of these diamonds, when you see this diamond, someone that it didn't look like that when it came out of the ground. Nowhere near. No one said, oh, well, that's going to be this. No, someone had to have the vision in order to see that. Now, before I get too far, think about that, how that relates to you. Some of us were fortunate enough to have a diamantaire in our lives. Some of us, whether it be your mother, your father, your coach, your friend, so some of us who were in the service of the Marine Corps, they were gunnery sergeants. That were the reason why I talk about gunnery sergeants in such a, I don't know, because a gunnery sergeant, for me, the Marine Corps boot camp was my dad. That was in 13 weeks from August to November was the beginning of family for me. I didn't have a really dad growing up. So the Marine Corps was my dad. So those gunnery sergeants, those drill sergeants were my diamantaires. They were the people who saw me as a rough gemstone and knew that I could be more. So take time to think about right now. I usually give you homework assignments, but right now, think about that one person, or maybe more than one. It's certainly more than one for me, who who planted the seed inside of you. Who allowed you, who did the work to facet who you are, to polish who you are, to cut who you are. When your mother was sitting there, when my mother was telling me, don't come home with anything less than a B on your report card, that's what she was doing. Now, it didn't sound nice when she said it. Don't come home, and she was serious. But 60 years later, here I am. 50 years later, here I am. Today. She was my diamantaire. Think about that person who was the person who created that for you. Some of you are yellow diamonds. Some of you are blue diamonds. Some of you are pink diamonds. Some of you are green diamonds. Some of you are white diamonds. That person that you are today is a result of the way you were cut, the way you were fashioned, the way you were put together, the way you were polished. That's who you are. And if you're not there, you're on the process. You're on the road. All the things that happen to you, good and bad. Good and bad. That's what I need you to get. Not just the good stuff. When you got an A in your test and, good, or you won the race that good, or you married the person that you wanted to marry and everything else. The bad stuff. When I was homeless, 31 years ago, that was part of my faceting. That was part of my polishing, getting my beep-a-doo beep kicked on a daily basis. Being down to that level, I was that person in the hole in the ground, literally. And people along the way saw that I could be more. My executive producer is one of those. When she called me up and said, Barry, do you want to do a show? Yeah, she saw that. She saw that. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about basically a story. Someone helped me create a story. Someone helped me create the story, see the story of my life. And from the understanding that story of who I was or who I am, what I experienced, that story is the thing that gave me value. Is it starting to come clear? It's no different than what we think about when we look at a diamond. When you look at a diamond, you're looking at the finished product. You don't know about the guy or the woman who was in that hole breathing air out of a hose from a generator up top. You don't know about him. You don't know about the person driving the truck who's making minimum wage to bring that gemstone to you. You don't know about that person who sat there painstakingly for hours trying to cut that gemstone, trying to figure out, and this is before technology. The Blue Hope Diamond was what? We're talking about 17th century? We're talking 16th, 17th century, some of the greatest diamonds. There was no AI. There was no CG. There was no computer program. Someone had to look at it. Someone had to look at this rock and say, you know what? I think if I put the angles together like this, and there was a what's his name? Tarkovsky figured out the angles or the mathematical equations of that would give the best light performance. That's where the whole concept of ideal perfect cut comes from him. But even when he was a mathematician. When he created the different angles and the table and the pavilion and the crown, when he created those angles, the technology wasn't where it needed to be in order to produce that. So he had to, whoever was cutting diamonds, and that's still the case today, you can only cut, or you can only make ideal cut if you have a diamond that is not so much worthy of that the material is there. So whatever that diamond becomes, someone had to see it, see its potential, and someone had to figure out how to do that, how to make that happen, had to do the work to make that happen. And then they had to get the people who bought the diamond to believe in it too. That's what you have to do. That's where the similarities are. You have to become your own diamantaire. You have to see the stuff that you've gone through in your life. How does that play into your overall story? If you learned how to fix, let's say your father was into, you're a woman, and your father really wanted a boy, and he wound up having you, a girl, and your father was really into fixing cars or something like this, and every weekend you was underneath a car with your dad, okay, and he was just really just passing you the tools, or maybe he saw it and just say, hey baby, let me teach you how to change a carburetor or something like this, how to drop an engine. That's in you. That's part of your story. Just like that diamantaire understood when he or she looked at that diamond, they understood what it takes to become, and whether or not you have that inside of you. And then from there, though you and that person cut who you are together to make who you are today. And without that process, you would just be a rock. You would just be that thing that people walk past and never saw it, because that wasn't a part of your story. I told somebody the other day, we were talking about different careers, and I said, I would love to be an engineer, but I don't like math like that. You got to like math. So the tools that is required, the things that's required to become an engineer, I don't have that. I'd have to work real hard at it if I wanted it, but just who Barry B. Mixon is, I don't have that. I don't sit around and dream in terms of math. But people who are engineers, people who are chefs, I just came from a country where people think of food in just magical ways, and they present it. because they understand the potential of what that food, what that taste, what that spice, what that ingredient can do to the whole thing. So that's the story. And then from that story, we're talking about value. Now, here we go. Rough gemstone, rough diamond, nothing. Look at it, nothing. I mean, it looks all pretty in this picture, but if you saw it on the ground, come on, you would never know that that diamond could become that. You would never know that this diamond can become that because someone took the time to cut it, because someone took the time to develop it, because someone took the time and have friends and have friends. Think about that. Think about that in your own life. How many people, those of you who are doing the things that you want to do in your life, take the time to think about how you got there. Those of us who are teachers, we understand that. We understand that. Those of us who are parents and moms and dad, we understand that. That the things that you're giving your child, that child, whether it be yours or not, is the faceting, it's the polishing. Those of you who take, I just got wonderful invitation to write in a healthcare newsletter in France, and it's going to the healthcare workers and the patients in like 10 different communities, 10 different towns in France. And the thing is, the caretakers are not only just taking care of human beings, they have to understand who those human beings were before they got Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever going on. That's what you have to understand. You have to understand what it is and the potential of it and where it can be. And when we come back, I'm going to give you the ultimate, as far as I'm concerned, example of someone who understood their story and changed the world. When we come back from the other side. Hey guys, I'm back. Two things. First of all, I have the greatest executive producer in the world. One of the things is this is not a turkey. This is not a turkey. This is a French rooster. This is a symbol of France. They don't call it a rooster. They call it that 4-letter word, but this is a family show, so we won't use that. That's what this is. And also, Barbara, why you had to show a picture of my old car? Not my new car, my new car. Why you had to show a picture of my new car? No, that's my tractor. Okay, so anyhow, let's get back to that. So let's get back to, so the person I want to introduce you to, we talked about cut. We talked about how someone saw the potential, how that had to be inside of who they are in order to become. That gemstone had to have that inside of them, the molecular structure in such a way that it produced that, because 95% of diamonds don't look like that. 99% don't look like anywhere later that there's things called industrial diamonds that don't look like that we use all the time. So we're talking about a very small percentage, extremely rare, of diamonds that look like that. But those who are not, they're still diamonds. They just don't look like that. You can't cut them because that's not what they have inside of them. It's not possible. Now, what we're going to talk about now is someone who exemplifies what happens when you understand your story. And that's Napoleon Bonaparte, which the movie comes out today. Those of you who know, I am a huge fan of Napoleon. Now, let me first say, first off, because somebody's going to sit there and get mad or talk about, oh, Napoleon did this. Napoleon was an interesting person. I mean, here's a whole, literally, this is the whole book. And if you ever want to really read a phenomenal book on Napoleon, this is a book written by Andrew Roberts. It's called Napoleon, A Life. So we're not going to talk about Napoleon was messed up in a whole lot of different ways. In a whole that he had issues. If Napoleon was alive today, some of the stuff he did then, oh, he would have lost his command. He would have lost his job. He might probably would be in jail to some extent. He would be all he did was so many different ways. His issues, especially his issues with women. Oh my God. I could write a whole book about just his issues with women. He literally, when he married his second wife, Marie Louise, he literally said, I want a womb. He thought that the only purpose of a woman was to have a baby. So when I talk about Napoleon, I don't want you to think that, well, God, he's a dictator. He was responsible for millions of people. He did this, he was misogynist. That's not what I loved about Napoleon. I wrote my first book report as a 10-year-old kid was about Napoleon. When I got the A++, it was this time of year. It was November. It was either the report had to be due. I'm pretty sure the report had to be due after the Thanksgiving holidays in New York. God knows how many years, 50 years ago. Okay, 53 years ago to be exact. All right. So I'm not here to talk about Napoleon as a military leader. No. Although Napoleon fought like 88 battles, he only lost 11 of them. I mean, he is the greatest military leader in history. Look it up. Google it. Okay, better than Hannibal, all those guys. He learned from those guys. I'm not here to talk about his. This is the battle you'll see in the movie. You go see the battle, one of his greatest battle, the Battle of Auschwitz, where he was totally shouldn't have won that battle, and because of who he was, he did. I'm not here to talk about how Napoleon, not just how he became an emperor, but how he crowned Josephine as his empress. Okay, and just to let you know, he was 35 years old when he did this. He was 35 years old when he did this. He became a general at 24. So when this is the poster from the movie, he came from nothing. He conquered everything. So what I'm here to talk about is not Napoleon, the emperor, the king, the prince, the general, the tyrant, the dictator. I'm here to talk about Napoleon the man. Napoleon the man, because when you understand on some level, who Napoleon was, and you understand what I've been talking about every week when I make the analogy to gemstones, not only do the analogies work together, you can't get past the analogies, but those same analogies that I'm making, you can apply to yourself. I'm here to prove that to you today. That's why this day is like, oh my God, I can't believe I have a show on the 22nd of November on the same day this movie's coming out. And I just came from not only his where he lived, where he was born, where he fought, and where he died in just the last few months. Exactly. All right. So here we go. Because Napoleon was a master storyteller. He really was. That's the thing that they don't really get you to understand. Napoleon was a master storyteller. Napoleon is the quintessential example, and I do like that word, of someone who not only understands who he is, but he understands the value of his story. Napoleon knew. He knew what he was going to be. Think about that for a second, guys. I mean, come on. Come on. Imagine being, you're 17, 18 years old, and you're just kind of trying to get through the things going on in your life and stuff like this. And somewhere in that, you just wake up in the morning and just say, you know what? I could run this whole thing. And people would say, run what? You mean the office? You mean your house? No. The planet, Europe. And because he believed in that story, he became it. Remember that line in as a man thinketh, very soon so altered has the man's mind become that he can no longer hold. So very soon so altered has his mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment is cast aside. and with the growth of opportunity which fit the scope of his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. That's Napoleon. That's Napoleon. Napoleon was nothing. And let me tell you a funny story before we really get into it. I was in France, the Château de Fontainebleau. I had to do a speech there. And it was during this ceremony. They was doing a whole ceremony of the house of the emperor. Fontainebleau, Château de Fontainebleau was where really all the monarchs lived, but Napoleon lived there. In fact, that's where he abdicated. I walked down the stairs, the whole thing. And I thought I had missed the day, the big ceremony. I was there looking at all the pieces, his sword. It was just his bicorn hat, a whole thing. It was amazing. But I was disappointed because I thought I missed the ceremony. So I came out of the building, Fontainebleau, and all of a sudden I walked, I don't know, half a mile because it's huge. And all of a sudden I hear dun 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 dun. You know, as a military person, I know a military parade cadence, just the sound. And I'm thinking, what am I listening to? And as I saw this mass of people marching in step in authentic French uniform, the army, the uniform of the Grand Army of the Emperor, I'm like, oh my God. And as I was going past and I stood there, just, you guys know I'm a big kid. So imagine, I've been thinking about this man since I was 10 years old. And here it is, the army, full regiment, everybody, general, everybody was there. And then here I'm standing there just like watching it. And I'm thinking, and there I saw his tricorn hat coming down in review. Okay, walking down, doing a review and inspection of his troops. I lost my mind. My heart was just, if it was on all those machines, it would have been like beep, 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 beep. It was like that. I couldn't believe it. And then, he went down, he had his whole encampment and everything else going on. And of course, I was the only, African-American there, really the only person of color there. And we was all gathered around and he was standing there doing this thing. And I just said, I am not going to miss this opportunity. So I raised my hand and I said, pardon-moi, my emperor, may I take a photo? May I take a photo with you? And I was literally, because you don't talk to the general. You talk to one of his officers. And I talked to, he's probably in the French military, that period of time, he probably was a colonel. And based on his amulet, stuff like that. And I asked him, could I take a photo with the emperor? And he looked at me. And then he looked at Napoleon, and Napoleon just in his emperor way. Of course, I know this wasn't the real guy before y'all think I'm some psychotic break. I know he was just an actor, but just the concept of it. And he took a picture with me. This is one of the greatest moments of my life. I took a picture with the Emperor of France because, and it's not that I was starstruck about him as a general or an emperor. It was starstruck when you begin to understand where he came from. Napoleon came this is a statue, a whole monument on one of the rivers that a major battle, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, major battle that he won, another battle that he shouldn't have won. He won, okay, against all odds, he won. But you have to understand who Napoleon was. First of all, Napoleon wasn't French. That's the thing. This is the man that signifies French. When you think of France, when you think of Paris, you can't even talk about Paris without talking about Napoleon. And so to understand that Napoleon, especially nowadays where, all this stuff about immigration and everything else, Napoleon wasn't French. He was actually more Italian. He was Corsican. Okay. His family, his family was an old time Italian family who was, they was okay in Italy. They immigrated to Corsica. So Napoleon actually was born the year before France took over the island of Corsica. So his real name was Napoleone de Bonaparte. I love saying that. Bonaparte. Okay. So that was who he was. And he spoke French, but he always spoke French with a funny accent. He really couldn't write French at all. His grammar was terrible, but that was his original name. And he changed it to Napoleon Bonaparte because it was more French. And if you've lived in France or visited, being as French as humanly possible is a good thing, right? Because French are French, right? You're French, and then there's everyone else. So that's what Napoleon. So that's the first thing to be impressed with. He came from. This is where he came from. Mountain Corsica is just like a little tiny island, not tiny, but it's a little island in the Mediterranean. I was living here, in May. Okay. And here's Corsica. Corsica is right across this is the Mediterranean. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's just that blue. It is just that blue. There's no special screenshots or filters here. That's it. All right. So this is it. It's just a mountainous place. Just a mountainous place. All right. Little island. Corsica. No, Napoleon came from nothing. Napoleon was lower middle class. He was lower middle class. His father was a lawyer, but his father was one of those kind of lawyers that, like, you see doing auto accidents. Hey, you need something fixed? Come check me out. Come call 1-800-Bonaparte. He was that kind of guy, and he died early. He had he died with his wife Letitia and 8 kids. 8 kids. So Napoleon was one of 8. All right. So this is his house. This is his house. No big mansion. This is the street that he lived on. This is it. This Napoleon's house is right here. Literally, this building is Napoleon's house. When you walk into the National Monument of Napoleon, you go through that door, and that's his house. And the whole time I was going through, this is his little church that's still there, that people go in. It's nice. It's a Catholic church. It's nice. But what you have to be impressed with was Napoleon, what he did with that. Napoleon was a nerd. Not only was he a nerd, he was a funny looking nerd. He was it as any book. Read any book of Napoleon. Napoleon, they will tell you Napoleon was not the best looking guy in the world. Okay. He was odd looking. They said, I read one there, a couple places, Napoleon looked like an elf. When he was a kid, he looked like an elf. He had a big head. He had big ears. he was gangling. He was always kind of sick. His face was pale. And so when you see these pictures of Napoleon, that was what he envisioned himself to be. And there was nothing to him. He joined the military when he was 17, him and his brother. He had an older brother, Joseph. They both went to France, and they joined the military. And what Napoleon was an artillery officer. That's why I can play that game pétanque, because I think, I imagine what would Napoleon do? He was an artillery officer, basically taking cannonballs, and projectile motion, science. That's what he did. And he rose up in the ranks. He saw things about himself. He saw where he wanted to be. And that's what I want you to get. I don't know how the movie is going to play. I'll talk about that in a second. But what I want you to get is the same concepts that Diamantaire made a diamond is the same concept that you can use in yourself in creating who you want. No matter where you are in your life, I think I'm empowered by the fact that if someone like him can do what he did, he died, if he was 56 when he died. He was an emperor when he was 35. He was a general at 24. He commanded the armies of France in his 20s. If someone can do that in that short amount of time, what can you do? He didn't have the homeboy hookup. He wasn't, but his father died early. And I think he was maybe 12, 13 when his father died, left him with a whole bunch of debt he had to deal with. Okay. It was a whole bunch of things before he became that man. Before that diamond, that rough diamond that I showed you, became the diamond, the hope diamond, or that beautiful yellow diamond, or if all those diamonds that now cost $30 million started from nothing. started from nothing, and nobody believed that Napoleon was going to be who he was. Nobody. He was a middle student. He was like, eh. In fact, he didn't even serve as long as he served when he went from lieutenant to colonel to general, like a matter of years, because he purposely put himself in the right place. He read books all the time. There's several stories about Napoleon. He was in jail a couple of times. He almost got killed, actually, a couple of times. It was just luck that didn't happen because of his mouth, because of his arrogance, because he saw who he was. And you'll see that in the movie. Hopefully. He had a choice between eating and reading a book. And he chose reading a book. That's how important stories were to him. He studied Alexander. He studied Hannibal. He studied Julius Caesar. He studied the people he took the stories of the people that he wanted to emulate, and he took those stories and imparted them in himself. That's why so many of the pictures you see of Napoleon's wearing when he was in Egypt, he created a piece of jewelry, a talisman, and I did it a couple of shows ago. He created a talisman based on ancient Egyptian numerology and mysticism. And it's priceless. I'll show that next. It's a priceless piece that he designed. It. So Napoleon, at some point in his life, even though he wasn't a gemologist, at some point in his life, he understood critical angle. He understood refractive index, not so much as a number, but he understood it as a concept that he could apply to himself. That's what he did. When you really just take away the word Napoleon and emperor in general and just replace it with diamond, you see the same concepts. The exact same concept. The polishing, the where to find it. The difficulty of developing it. Napoleon touched you can't even go to France, especially Paris, without talking about Napoleon. Napoleon is everywhere. Bridges, roads, trees, restaurants, hotels, everywhere. And what scares me, the one thing I will say, what scares me about this movie is I think this movie is going to talk about just one aspect. Well, they're going to talk about the military aspect, but the thing that they're going to talk about Napoleon, the worst, I think, is his issues with his wife, Josephine. Josephine was a trip. Josephine was one of those. Josephine was kind of like Jada, the way they're portraying Jada Pinkett and Will Smith. Beautiful woman, although she had rotten teeth because she lived on a plantation. She ate sugarcane all the time. So she never smiled. This was her smile because her teeth supposedly were black and rotten. Okay. But he absolutely loved her. He absolutely, and she did nothing for him. I mean, and she didn't even have children. But even when he was exiled and all the stuff, he would write, and I don't have it here. I have a book about half the size of this of just his love letters. And Napoleon was so awesome that he would write love letters in the middle of a battle, like ducking cannonballs and like, my dearest Josephine, this may be the last day of my life, but I will leave this plane thinking about you. He was that kind of guy. So when if you go see the movie, you're not just you're seeing one part of a man, of a great human being who took his story and made it into something incredible. And that is what inspires me about Napoleon. When I see Napoleon, when I see him, when I think about relationships that I've been in my life, okay? He never took away the title of empress from Josephine. Even when he got married again, he never took that away because he loved her. So was Napoleon a flawed man? Absolutely. Napoleon just did stuff that I sit there and go, really, dude? Really? Really? Was he arrogant? Yeah. I mean, you got to be arrogant when you think you can run the whole world. Yeah. You got to be. But look but that's what you have to do when you're looking at a gemstone. You have to look at a gemstone. This is his sword. I held this in my hand. This is the sword that he was coronated in. This diamond, this big diamond on the hilt, this is called the Regent diamond. The Regent diamond is a 141 karat diamond that is considered the perfect diamond. It is considered the perfect diamond. That's it. That's what it is. 100 and flawless diamond. It's worth, oh my God, what did they say it was worth? I think it went for $40 million. Something like $40 million. The Regent diamond. This is what he had on his hilt this is just to let you know he was a man. Napoleon tried to kill himself. This is the sword that he tried to kill himself with. And the only reason he wasn't successful was because he went to bed the night before he was going to kill himself. He told his servant, his manservant, don't come in the room. Just leave me alone. Just and his servant knew he was tired and everything, but he knew something else was going on. So he left Napoleon alone for a little bit, and then he just said, you know what, something's up. Let me check. And he went back in there, and Napoleon is about ready to do himself in with this sword, this ceremonial sword, and he didn't. His servant talked him out of it, and he presented. The reason why they have this sword is because he literally presented it as a gift to his servant. So that speaks to those of us who are going through mental illness, going through different things in your life. All I'm saying is that there's hope. There's hope. And if you can't find it yourself, sometimes if you're fortunate enough, you have a diamantaire, you have someone in your life that can say, you know what, Barry, you can be more. Here's the man who literally fought the whole of Europe. I mean, you got to be a bad boy to talk about. Some of us are having fights with our school council or our husband or employer at work or wives. This is a man that fought Europe, not once, not twice, but 6 different times. 6 different times. And yet he became. This is where he's buried. In this beautiful, so when I saw this was him towards the end, and so when you look at who Napoleon, this is where he sat. This was his throne, and people sat there and waited for him. So when you see what I will say, lastly, say is when you go to Corsica, if you have an opportunity to go to Corsica, and I went there in May to see not only where he was born, but just to see his monument. There's this huge monument. It sits on a hill, and this is it. This is Napoleon's monument to himself, 1769 to 1821. This was the year of his life. And I remember just looking up at him, looking up at just the statue of him and just thinking, not so much praying to him because he's not a god, he's just a man. He's a man. And what gets me, what the purpose of this show is to show you that the same concepts that fit for Gemstone, the exact same concept. You can't even tell me a concept that happens to do jewelry or gemology that does not relate to people. You can't. You cannot. There's like either directly or indirectly. So here's a man that started from nothing. This monument is maybe 5 miles from where his house, where he grew up, and yet he became the emperor of France. So your homework assignment today is to take a moment, take some time. This is Thanksgiving. You talk about giving thanks. Give thanks. Ask you, this is the bridge that he walked over. Him and his army 200 years ago. This is the bridge. I was sitting on the bridge that he walked over. So take the time to think about your story. Take the time to think about who is the diamantaire in your life. Who is the person who helped mold you, faceted you, polished you, kicked your butt when you needed to, picked you up from that dirty place that you were, and made you into the gemstone you are today. Think about that. Because that story that you have in your body, in your mind, in your molecular structure, just like a diamond, is what makes you who you are today. That's why I end each week, thank you, Barbara, that's saying that nothing has value without a story. Nothing. So this Thanksgiving, or those of my friends in Europe who don't celebrate that, just this Wednesday, just give thanks whether you're in front of a turkey or whatever, give thanks to the person who's loved you, who cared about you, who supported you, who made you feel like Napoleon. Okay, or the female feminine version of saying Napoleona. Okay, whatever. And so until next week, I hope you enjoyed today. I hope you get a chance to see the movie. Again, I'll probably do a review on the movie, what it was about. Again, I think they're just going to concentrate on some of his military tactics and that he was smitten. I'll just use that word to Josephine, and Josephine got to his head in a lot of ways. But I hope you see the movie, and I hope you, more importantly, take the time to give thanks to not only yourself for being the person that you took the time to develop, but also loving and appreciating and saying thank you to the people in your life who helped make you who you are today. So until next week, my name is Barry B. Mixon. I am a Gemmological Storyteller, and I truly hope and wish you the blessings of holidays, or at least this weekend, and take time to discover the value of your own stories. So until next week, au revoir, à te tella, voila.